Hi guys, how are you? Constantin here from CGC. Just Happy New Year. This is the first video I'm making for 2023 on my YouTube channel. The reason why I made it was because I've read a very interesting article the other day. I was wondering myself some issues in the article I've just read. I wanted to make a quick video about it so more people will know, and I'm going to reference it too on multiple social media channels. So what it is, as you all know, Ryzen 3000, when it was launched, AMD made a big splash about it, as they always do. It was also very, very hyped by the fans because the Ryzen 7000 series that was released last year came with the Zen 4 architecture, which Zen 4 architecture promised a lot more improvements from the previous one, so a lot better performance, which they did. Most of it they delivered. It also has a new architecture in terms of fabrication process, so it's made on the, which one is it, 5 nanometer process from TSMC, so smaller chips. Anyways, it was a really, and it is a really good CPU when it was launched and stuff like that. The only issue that AMD had with it, and they quickly responded, was price tag. The price tag was a bit too high compared to the previous versions. It was about, I don't know, in the UK, I think about somewhere around 200 quid, 150, 200 quid, I might be wrong, from their normal launch price for the highest tier CPU that they could launch. So I think I did purchase one myself. The 7950X was around 750 pounds, where they normally sell for 550, 600. The previous generation, I meant. That's probably because of inflation as well. As we all know, 2022 was a really bad year in terms of economy. A lot of things went bad, a lot of things went expensive. I'm not going to go into it, it's not the purpose of my video. So the main reason was price. People weren't very happy with the price, but performance was out there. It is pretty much generally, and on an overall basis, it's neck to neck with the 12 series. It was slightly better on some things, slightly worse on other benchmarks, as it always is. Now with the 13 series, Intel actually managed to step ahead of Ryzen 7000 series CPUs. Not by a long shot, but the performance is better, and at the moment Intel is king in terms of gaming performance. Now, this is all about to change, as they have confirmed as of February 14, 2023, AMD will launch the Ryzen X3D CPUs for the 7000 series. So the X3D CPUs, the X3D architecture, pretty much, for those who don't know, what they do is they just put more cache for the CPU on top of the CPU die. Because the CPU has more cache, it's able to deliver better performance in some applications, especially games. So games beneficiate a lot from the X3D architecture, as if you just check some benchmarks, the X3D architecture is currently used in Ryzen 5800 X3D, and it manages to be head-to-head with the 13 series, even from Intel. On some games, that's how good it is, and considering the Ryzen 5000 series is a relatively old architecture. Going to it, at CES, they've announced that they will launch the Ryzen 7000 X3D architecture CPUs, and this year, compared to the previous year, they're going to launch 3 models. So each of the Ryzen CPUs that they've launched so far will have an X3D version. So that means 7800 X3D, I believe, 7900 X3D, and 7950 X3D. So this was all great. When I first saw this, I said, well, wonderful, because I knew that it comes with a lot of performance improvements, and there's a slide which they showed, and in game performance it was about 5-10%. In business and other production applications, it was up to 30% for encoding, decoding, or I think encrypting, decrypting. Anyways, so what surprised me was the fact that usually the X3D architecture, which is the cache, which is like pretty much basically some silicon which is on top of the CPU die. This X3D is very sensitive to temperature, so it did not allow the previous generation to clock as high as it could. So the frequency was pretty much limited, so the CPU doesn't overheat. So the X3D cache works within limits. Now with the Ryzen 7000 series, I was surprised to see that only one of the models, which is the 7800 X3D, had its frequency reduced to 5 gigahertz from 5.7. I'm talking about the boost frequency now. So that was like, okay, all right, that's interesting. And the 7950 X3D had the same frequency, 5.7 gig boost frequency, sorry. So I was like, okay, so something might have changed here. They might have done some I don't know, architecture improvements and stuff like that to allow the CPU to boost to the same boost frequency as the non-X3D version and include a lot of cache, like up to 144 megabytes of cache. So that's huge. Now the other day I've read an article from PC Mag which pretty much sort of like explained how X3D technology works on the Ryzen 7000 series, and it's quite interesting. So you guys either read the article, which I'm going to put in my description of this video, or watch this video to the end before you buy a 7000 X3D series CPU. So let's get into it. I'm going to switch my display to that article itself. It's from PC Gamer. It's made by a guy called Jeremy Laird. Right, so this is the Ryzen 700 chip, as you can see here. So it has Ryzen 7000, sorry, this is the 7900 or 7900 architecture. As you can see, based on chiplet technology that AMD has been using for a while now, you basically have two CPU dies, CPU die 1 and CPU die 2, and one bigger IO die which is made on a bigger process, like 6 nanometer or something like that, and these are made on 5 nanometers. Okay. So what this guy is saying here, I'm just gonna go through it, is pretty much that the 3D V-cache technology, when they apply it on the 7000 series, they don't apply it on both die caches. They only apply it on one die cache, which results in the asymmetrical design, as he says, and I believe that is the correct term for it. So you will have one CPU die with a lot of cache on it, and one CPU die without cache on it. How does that affect the CPU, you're asking probably right now? I've asked the same thing. Well, that's where the interesting question is. So because you have the same properties from the previous technology, which means it must not get too hot, it then results that the die with the 3D V cache on it will not be able to boost as high as the die without 3D V cache on it. So this is where the trick is, and this is where the catch is actually. So you will have one die which will boost up to 5.7 gigahertz, like they said, but the other die will boost probably up to 5 gigahertz, as they described. If we go lower, I believe in the article, right, it's what they said. So the 7950 X3D will boost up to 5.7. 7900 X3D, which is still two dies, will boost up to 5.6, so slightly slower, but it has, on each die it has, I believe, 6 cores instead of 8. And the 7800 X3D, which is just one die with the cache on it, just like the 5800 X3D, will boost up to 5 gigahertz. So that's a 0.7 gigahertz difference. That's massive for games nowadays, especially with Intel CPUs behind their back. So what I'm trying to get at is, obviously, if I've got two dies, one running at 5 gigahertz, the other running at 5.7 gigahertz, and a lot of cache, the main problem is how will games know what die to use for gaming? Because there will be games which need that cache and will use the slower die, speed could use potentially the slower die speed, and you'll have games that don't need the cache and need the higher die clock speeds to run better. That is why AMD is doing what Intel did with Windows Thread Director. So when they've announced their hybrid architecture, which is big cores, little cores, they've also announced that they've worked with Microsoft to develop a thread director, which this thread director's job was to assign tasks such as game applications to the fast cores, which are the peak cores, and to assign tasks that don't require a fast CPU, like, I don't know, antivirus running in the background, to your E cores. This is how they managed to get those huge performance boosts and such, and multitasking boost as well. So AMD said that they're going to be doing the same thing. In this case, they're going to work with Microsoft to release some drivers as well. So in Windows, and they're going to release a chipset driver as well for X3D, which pretty much tells Windows which cores to use for each application. So it's gonna be a per game basis. Therefore, each game needs to be told, okay, if you're the type of game that requires a lot of cache, you better use this CCD, or if you're the type of game that requires a lot of that needs a CPU boost, a fast CPU, you better use this other CCD because it has higher frequencies. Now, obviously, this is gonna mean that from day one, when these things will be released, and they've made it official, they're gonna be released on St. Valentine's Day, so that's February 14th. So when these things are gonna be released, no one can guarantee for sure that your game will actually run faster on it. It might run a lot faster, it might run the same, because if your game that you're normally playing does not need a lot of cache to run faster, and if your game gets stuck on the cache die, which is running at the lower frequency that the Ryzen 7000 series CPU normally runs, so it runs around 5.5, 5.6 usually, with standard cooling, your CPU is probably going to run at 4.8, 4.9, because it's going to be on the 3D cache die. You're actually going to see, I don't know if you're going to see much of a performance increase until Windows releases the new I don't know, Windows upgrades, and AMD releases a new chipset driver for it, so your system runs all right. And as we all know, AMD is notorious when it comes to drivers. I mean, they're still behind on the Adrenaline driver series. Sometimes it's been improved a lot over the years. It's aged like fine wine for the 6000 series, but usually they are notorious with driver issues when they release drivers. So what I'm saying at the end of the day is the X3D technology on the Ryzen 7000 will be accompanied by software. So unless these two perfectly work together, so Windows software, chipset software, and the new CPUs, you're not going to be 100% guaranteed a performance increase. Now, as this guy says, there's going to be a big, so this pretty much shows the performance increase with the 7800 X3D. All right, but these are cherry-picked games which actually play better if you have more cache on the CPU. But there are games that won't do that, and they won't put this in the charts, of course, because this is marketing. So what I'm saying is, what pretty much all the YouTubers say when a new technology gets launched is, before you buy it, if you're interested in performance, just wait a little bit. Now, if you're buying a new PC, I would say, all right, go for 788, go for the best X3D CPU you can get, because you're buying a new PC, and just wait for the software to mature. But if you already have a 7000 series, and there are some out there, myself included, I currently have the 7950 X3D for my gaming rig, and if you currently have the 7000 series and you're looking to upgrade for that 20% performance increase for the 9000 X3D, because that's that's what's worth for me and for probably a lot of people out there. If you already have it, wait for the reviews and for the drivers to mature before doing it, because otherwise you're just gonna have to struggle for a bit until these things happen. And as we all know, they don't happen quickly. So you will probably get, this is what normally happens, we'll probably get a technology coming out first and drivers coming out after, and we're gonna have to sort out some bugs. So I'm really hoping that it's not as such of a big issue as let's see if there's anything else here. So Jeremy Laird, thank you very much for this article. It was very revealing. So I'm really hoping. Yep, I gotta speak to the mic as well. I'm really hoping that the issue is not as big as it seems, but until we see the reviews, I would just say consider that article and consider thinking about this before you buy an X3D CPU. Performance isn't always guaranteed. Now, for 7800, you don't have any other choice, but for 7900 and 7950 X3D, you will have a bit of choice. Now, guys, thank you very much for watching this, and I'm hoping this was useful to you. Yeah, cheers, bye.